Hello everyone and welcome back to a short EP review, and in this video I'm going to review And I Return to Nothingness by Lorna Shore. Okay, so this is kinda of a special case. This is a first for me because prior to this point I've never talked about the Deathcore release on this channel, not at least one that I remember. That's mainly because I don't really like deathcore. I struggle to find good deathcore bands. I'm not really looking forward to deathcore releases, and out of the metal and core subgenres, this is one of those that I'm the least interested in. Deathcore for me feels like a genre that could have potential, and I admit that in some cases I truly admire the technicality and very clean and detailed production that goes in many deathcore projects. However, especially in more recent years, it has ended up becoming one of the most generic and basic genres to ever exist. There are so many different bands that come out in the deathcore scene, and many of them just sound exactly the same. There are so many of them that try to present themselves as they're trying to do something different, but so many of them seem to recycle the same ideas over and over and over again. There is no innovation, there is not something different, something unique. It's just the same thing repeated multiple times, and all of the bands end up becoming really one-dimensional and basically clones of one another. In the case of Lorna Shore, I guess they're presented in a bit more different fashion, mainly because they also implement to their sound some elements of symphonic black metal, which is definitely cool. However, other than that, many of the structures and the ideas and the overall sound doesn't really go that far to what you would expect from a typical deathcore project. In some cases it is fairly predictable. But Lorna Shore ended up releasing the very first track out of this EP, To the Hellfire, which everyone talked about it in the metal scene. There was a big fuss over this track in particular, especially towards the end of the song, which closes with basically what's perceived to be one of the sickest breakdowns ever made. And listening to the whole song, I can get what the hype and the fuss is all about. This is a track that definitely caught me off guard, and I was pleasantly surprised with the results. Now, before we get into the part everyone is talking about, which is the final minute of the song, I think that this track overall is actually pretty solid. Even if it's a track that is 6 minutes long, I was actually quite impressed that this song never really felt boring. It was never one-dimensional, the pacing was really well executed, and I feel that it is a track that was engaging from start to finish. I like many aspects out of this track. The production is superb, the vocals are insanely good, the symphonic aspects just sounded really well, and also the performances. All of the instruments are just like really technical, and it just sounds impressive. It is a really well done and professional song. And then you have the final minute of this track, which is this really intense breakdown that just goes on, and you feel that it's going to finish, but it just keeps going and gets sicker with each punch. Now, it would certainly feel hyperbolic to claim that this is the greatest breakdown I've ever heard, but this really feels like it's next level, like I was not expecting this. This is such a nasty and hard-hitting breakdown. The kick and the bass just hit really well. The production is insane. I like how at times it gets slower and slower, and it gets more hard-hitting. And you also have the vocals, which at points they just sound inhumane. I'm really curious how this could even be executed live. Like, this part feels like so unreal. It feels like it's so hard to believe that this can be performed live. You can feel the filth and the disgust in each drop. You just listen to the final minute and your face is constantly in this frown. You're like, oh, this is so sick and nasty. Now, other than that, getting into the two next songs, I wasn't honestly expecting much. I was just basically expecting more of the same, something that basically happens with many deathcore releases being pretty one-dimensional and having this one single just being the highlight. And yeah, the rest of the track listing feels somewhat one-dimensional and kinda predictable, but honestly still, the results were pretty solid and I was pleasantly surprised overall with this project. In the track of the Abyss, I feel that the most standout part and the highlight of this whole track is the symphonic parts. They're apparent in almost the entirety of the song and they just feel really epic and gorgeous, and they sound really good as well. I wouldn't necessarily say that they feel amazingly with the rest of the deathcore instrumentation, but it still gets the job done. There is another case over here where we have a sick breakdown towards the middle of the song, and I would say that another thing that stands out in the song for me was the chorus. I actually ended up really enjoying the chorus of this track. It feels really memorable and it's quite nice and melodic. I would say that it's definitely more memorable compared to what To the Hellfire did in terms of that aspect. Finally, there's the self-titled track and I Return to Nothingness, which for me basically has elements taken from the previous two songs, and for me it ended up becoming the one track that I liked the least, and the more I ended up listening to this, the more I ended up enjoying this track as well. For me, once again, its biggest highlight has to be the chorus. It is another really nice and melodic one that also ends up becoming quite memorable, and it also gets even better towards the end of the song where you have some note changes being a bit higher, which leads to a really epic finisher. It is a satisfying climax and it makes for a really powerful conclusion for this whole project to end like this. It ends on a high note. So yeah, I don't really have any complaints about this EP. I feel that it really helps that this release is just an EP. Deathcore is one of those genres that is really hard to sit through an entire album. In my opinion at least, I cannot really see myself sitting through an entire deathcore project. They become extremely quickly stale, repetitive, and one-dimensional. It's not really worth it. With just having 3 tracks right here, it feels really appropriate. The tracks can be quite lengthy, going for the 6-minute mark, but the pacing of each track was really good. It never felt boring, it was quite engaging from start to finish. I was really pleasantly surprised with this release. This was certainly much better than expected, and I am looking forward to more in the future. I'm going to give it a Return to Nothingness an 8- out of 10. What's your opinion on this EP? Like it, dislike it, why, and what do you comment to review next time? Let me know down in the comments. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe for more content like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye.